Hello, thanks for checking out this video. My name is Josiah, and in advance of our nonpartisan primary forum on April 29th, and in advance of the primary on May 20th, 2025, for mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, we sat down with each of the candidates officially on the ballot to get to know them better. We designed these interviews to be conversational, a chance for people to hear a little bit more about their history, their passion for public service, why they got into politics, or why they're entering into politics, as the case may be. And we just wanted to let you know that in some of these conversations, we touch on some intense topics, things that have happened in the city, maybe it's violence or other topics that we just wanted you to be aware of going in. I also would like to acknowledge our partner on these interviews and on the forum for April 29th, Public Source, which is a fine regional independent journalism organization focused on the city of Pittsburgh and our region. They helped develop some questions based on their coverage of the high-level topics and themes of the race. And while I didn't pose every question that they developed to the candidates, just letting the conversations go as they will, wanted to acknowledge that and thank them for their partnership on this series and on the forum on April 29th. So without further ado, hope you enjoy. And if there's time, I hope you join us on Tuesday, April 29th, 2025 at Point Park University, where all of the candidates will be there to talk about these themes, their candidacy, and this moment in Pittsburgh. Thanks. Corey O'Connor in the studio. Thanks for taking the time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So, I've been asking people what their Pittsburgh origin story is. That's a pretty simple question for you, but walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, born and raised in Squirrel Hill, the house that my mom was born and raised in. So, you know, it's a total Pittsburgh story. Whole family lived there, and then from there, you know, didn't move out till basically after college. Then, you know, now we were living with my wife in Swisstown Park. Had one child there. When we had baby number 2, there was no space, so now we're over in Point Breeze, but, you know, can't leave the city. It's just a part of me, it's part of the family, and it's a great city to live in.
It really is. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Duquesne.
Very good.
Yes.
Oh, it's in the city.
It's in the city. That's actually funny. I went to, if you think about it, I went to middle school at Frick, went to high school at Central, and then college at Duquesne. So I went from middle school on the same street. Yeah. Because it goes all the way down. Fifth goes all the way through both campuses. So it worked out.
It's kind of cool that you can do that in a city.
It is. I mean, it's something different and unique. I did spend a semester. Duquesne had a program at American U where I got to intern for Congressman Doyle and be in D.C., which was kind of fun, something different. But yeah, it's a great city, and you know, you go away, but when you come home, you can't leave Pittsburgh for too long, or at least I can't.
Yeah, I hear that. So you mentioned Congressman Doyle. Tell us about how you got into public service. It's been a career for you for many years now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously growing up in a household that was in public service was helpful. Seeing from a family perspective what it's like, and then seeing, you know, how you would operate, various things like that on a daily basis, not just in an office, but at home. Mm-hmm. And then I actually had the opportunity. I ran into the congressman's district director. He said, "We have a community development job open. I know you're interested." I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." And went to work for the congressman for a few years. And it was great because you're being a staffer and then going to an elected, you have a unique ability because you get to answer phones and be the front line of constituent services. So then when you're the elected, you want to shape your office in that way. Yeah. And I actually it was a hard transition for me because leaving the controller or the congressman's office, I always answered the phones. I mean, there was a bunch of us, but when the phone rang, you answered it. Yes. And then I got to the council office, and I would start answering the phones. Right. And everybody's like, "Well, we should screen to see who's on the other side." I said, "Oh, no, it's fun to answer the phone." So my first year, we got our paving list, and I remember there was a street that was on the list, but it wasn't released to the public yet. And I said, answer the phone. I said, "Councilman O'Connor." And this guy tore into me. I mean, called me every name you can imagine because his street he didn't think was on the list. Yeah. And he didn't know it was me. So he's saying, "You tell him," and beep, 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 beep. And then I said, "Well, you know, sir, it's actually on the list. It's going to get done, you know, in the end of May." And then he paused and he said, "Wait, is this Corey?" I said, "Yeah, it's me. How are you doing?" He said, "Oh, you're doing a great job. Thank you." And he hung up the phone real quick. But I think that's, you know, the type of leader you have to be is just talk to people. Yeah. And you're not always going to get the right answer. You know, not everybody likes what you do, but I think if you're present, take their phone calls, talk to everybody, whether they're for or against you. That's, the type of elected you have to be. And I think I learned that being a staffer first.
Yeah. One of my favorite things at working at the city was answering phones.
Oh, yeah.
Because it would ring. You're like, I don't know what this is going to be. Someone's like,
you
I'm calling the
never
city
know.
right now.
Yes.
And
then you do get, I remember being a staffer and there was, like Tuesday at 2:00, same person's calling with the same issue. And, you listen to them, but it's, it's the same. And I think it was interesting at a congressional level because, they want you to plow your streets or pave. And it's like, well, Congress doesn't do that, but we will pass it along. And I think that's also helpful to direct people on who should be that constituent for various levels of it.
Right. You start to learn about how the pieces fit together or don't fit together.
Right.
Okay. So you were with Congressman, and what an era, he was there, right?
Yeah, Mike was great.
And then city council. So walk us through that transition. What led you to city council?
Yeah, there was an opening in my neighborhood. Doug Shields at the time ran for district magistrate, so it was an opening. And I just saw it, great opportunity. I was 26 at the time, and
it's pretty young.
It was pretty young. But I think growing up in that world, and then being prepared from the congressman's office to step right in, it was a great opportunity. And was successful in that election and then served for 11 years. And I think you learn, first day is obviously different. You're getting adjusted, but then you come into your zone, you figure it out. And then now having that 11 years of knowledge of the city, you know exactly how you would change things. And I think that's very helpful running for mayor because you can pinpoint, okay, this didn't work when I was on council. That needs changed. Or we got X amount of calls on this from constituents. Let's make that change.
Yeah. How did you go about building your team at city council? Because as you mentioned, it's a lot of constituent services. People want, meat and potatoes things for where they live. So how did you go about that?
Yeah, there were a couple staffers that we retained. I had known them, and the Judy Trombetta at the time was Doug Shields' chief of staff, did an amazing job, kept her. And then she is actually a local commissioner outside of Philly right now. She left. And then I, went out and hired another chief of staff after that. But it was actually interesting. The one staffer was somebody that, just wanted to serve. This was the only staffer I had hired at the time. I kept everybody else there. Her name was Judy from Hazelwood. Walked into the campaign office and said, look, I just want to help my city. What can I do? And I said, well, things look good in the campaign. I would love for you to, share your passion with the city and come and work. So she was the first staffer I hired, and she was great. She was with us for, I want to say 4 or 5 years. She actually had a fun note. It was the day we found out that we were going to put $80 million into Hazelwood Green, which has now become a hub and, really reinvented that neighborhood. And she wrote a note, and it was Dawn Smith from RIDC was calling. And I'll never forget this because I always tease Judy. She left me a note. She said, Dawn Smith, and it said, F you. And I was like, why is he saying F you? We just got $80 million. We're like turning the whole community around. This is great news for Hazelwood. And she said, no, I meant for you. I was like, oh, okay.
Got it.
So once we got past that, it was a great day that, we got $80 million to clean up that site, invest in the neighborhood, and turn around. So, that's kind of how staffers, we've had, my chief of staff now in the controller's office has been with me, I want to say almost 11 years, counting council and over here. So it's good that we can keep staffers because they know you and you know them, and it makes it a lot easier.
No doubt. Kind of a deep cut, but Don was involved with the beginning of Pump.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day.
Don's had his fingerprints on a lot of things in this region. He's a very good guy. Yeah.
Want to get to the mayor's race. Tell us about being a county controller. So you went from city council to a county position. I believe most folks that are going to be watching a Pump video will know that there's a county government with 130 municipalities in the county. And this is a controller position for that. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, the controller's job actually does a lot more than people think. We just don't, look at the money and see where the checks and balances are. We do that, but we also have probably about 92 employees. And that goes from our payroll division that pays everybody in the county. And we've streamlined a lot of the pay stubs are now direct We're working with the treasurer's office to stop mailing out checks, so that would save county money. But we do, direct deposit. You get an email. We do that. We do audits. We've done a number of audits around DHS, homelessness services. We've done audits at the jail. We've done audits on the Clean Air Fund, which impacts a lot of people and the environment around us. So we do audits. We also have an accounting division. A lot of people don't realize we also do the payroll or the paychecks to all the poll workers. So doing that whole process and making sure that everybody gets paid for volunteering on their during elections is very important to us. And the last thing nobody would ever think we do, we actually have a construction division. Because when somebody does a county project and they're getting county dollars, we inspect that job so that, something is built properly, so that if it is incorrect, it doesn't come out of the taxpayers, it comes out of the contractor to go back and fix those projects. And we've seen it on a number of occasions, whether, the concrete isn't poured deep enough, or the pool setup, the pipe wasn't going the right direction. So there's a lot of checks and balances that we do, especially around construction.
That's wonderful. So now you're running for mayor.
Yeah.
So give us the summary of why you got in the race. Why another public service job, right? You've done a lot. I'm sure you could pivot to other things if you wanted. Why this?
I just think right now the city is struggling. If you look at it, we have right now a failed administration who's not talking about growth and opportunity, and I see it all around. And I think being in the city, loving this city, and having those 11 years of experience on council, I could step in tomorrow and know how to turn water fountains on in the summer. Something like that is very frustrating because those are the basic needs that we have in our city. And then also looking at it now over the last 3 years from the county perspective, we see how bad the city's finances are. And we know that we're walking off a financial cliff, whether they're going to admit it or not. We see it in the numbers. So then, I looked at my background and said, well, wait, for me, it's now stretching every taxpayer dollar to the fullest ability. We're not going to go out and hire all of our political friends like we've just seen over the last few years. We have to actually be smart with our investments, and we have to start growing our city again, providing opportunities, because there's empty, vacant space all around us that we aren't using. There's properties that could be used for affordable housing that aren't clean. Like clean up those lots. Have them shovel ready so that a community group can actually build within their community. And I think you're just missing that leadership. And I looked at the opportunity and said, look, this is a great opportunity to rebuild Pittsburgh, and I want to be part of that conversation.
Gotcha. So you mentioned some of the headwinds, right? And there's been a lot too, right? We haven't talked about COVID, and there's a lot of shifts in the ecosystem in certain ways. How does that kind of inform your thinking about early priorities, right? So if you get in the job, where do you begin?
So I think, what we hear a lot is streamlining the process of PLI, making sure the permits go out a lot faster, permits license, and that's not just for big projects. That's for people adding an addition to their house, putting a fence in.
Mom and pop shops that
want to open, but they have to go through inspections. And why does it take so long? Why do we shift from this inspector to that inspector? And everybody has different ideas. So I think streamlining that shows that, you're caring about the details of the city and that you can get a permit in Pittsburgh. But then also taking it further to see vacancies. And why are we not having young entrepreneurs open up storefronts? I mean, we have the ability to do that, whether you give them a tax incentive up front or you invest a couple grand so that they could fix up their storefront and expand their companies. But nobody's talking about that. And that's the frustrating part. The other thing that's frustrating is we keep selling Pittsburgh on the same thing every single time. It's, we have rivers, we have great sports teams, we have great food. Okay, well, but I want to start a business. Is Pittsburgh welcoming for me to do that?
Yeah, I want to start a family, put down roots.
I want to start a family. Is it there's areas that are affordable. Okay, so let's talk about growing out those areas. And I also think we don't talk about welcoming people to Pittsburgh. Last year alone, we heard that, or we know this, there were 40 immigrants in the South Hills, part of the city and outside in the county, that created new jobs or new companies. That's amazing. That should be on every flyer. And instead, we're not doing that. We're going back to the same old routine. And I think somebody coming in like myself with fresh ideas, knowing the city as well as I do can really help sell this region for why we have to start growing. I mean, the next census, we could be at 300,000 people or less than 300,000 people. That's scary.
We don't want that.
No.
That would affect our tier status at the state. Is that correct?
It could, yes. I mean, obviously, you go up to the state and make the argument if you get to that point. But I think we shouldn't be in that position.
Yeah, we want to grow.
We want to grow, and people want to grow in Pittsburgh. But it's as you said, it's young entrepreneurs. It's companies that are here, not losing them to the Chicagos, the LAs, the New Yorks. Yeah, we can't compete with all the amenities that some of those cities have, but we can talk to those companies so that robotics firms don't start here and then leave.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're missing. We're missing that one-on-one connection with local companies that will expand, that will create, not only their roots here, but create jobs that then spin off into, employment in areas that haven't seen it before.
Yeah.
And we know that our unemployment rate right now, the Fed came out with it, was the second worst in the country behind San Francisco. That's terrible. We have to start that growth mentality again. And not only that, we have to start looking at how we use our rec centers. I want to talk about young people being invested in the city. Our rec centers are still run like they were in the 70s, 9 to 5. Why are they not 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. so that two parents who work drop their kids off before they go to work? And even on Saturdays, have open gym. Let kids go in and play pickup basketball, play volleyball, whatever they want to do in our gyms. Be more open to the public than we are. And we're not doing the simple things that actually, make you feel vested in your city anymore.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly tell you recreation's having a moment, and more would be better. There's no doubt about that.
And I mean, look at the parks tax. Instead of investing in our parks, we went out and hired more people. It's not what the tax was meant to do.
Investments into, so Pump was, just for folks that are listening, part of the coalition. It was mostly the Parks Conservancy was the spearhead on that. But Pump was part of the community coalition that advocated for this parks tax to establish a trust fund under the premise that there would be material improvements in parks and thoughtfulness on implementation in terms of like where you might begin, and those projects really informed by community need. But then this idea of raising the average of all the parks, which we have like an incredible system. It could have an even more incredible system. So you'd think you'd take another look at that and.
Yeah, I mean, again, the tax was supposed to go to capital. It's not supposed to go to hire political friends. And I think that's the issue. And it's also meant to, buy equipment so that we can cut our ball fields, so that we could drag our fields. It's the little things. It's the details of when you walk to our fields, you should be proud to be playing at Marino Field. Yeah. It's those little things that go a very long way, and we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, love that. I want to talk very quickly about the communications piece, because I'm hearing two things in terms of your vision. One is telling the story about Pittsburgh better. But then I also hear this having a more personal touch, where you as mayor, you as an administration are communicating directly with stakeholders, business people, would-be business people, families, and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit more on how you would want to accomplish both of those. Yeah. I see a Venn diagram there, right? But how you would.
No, I mean, I think, you obviously hire people around you that are capable. They also would know the city, so that, you don't have time for an 8-month training wheel process. You have to hit the ground running in this job, especially now that we've gone through what we're seeing when it comes to lack of jobs, lack of housing, all of those things. You have to hit the ground running. And I say this all the time. If a pothole question or somebody doesn't get their pothole fill gets to my personal cell phone, and look, most people in the city have my personal cell phone. I'm okay with that. But if somebody's saying my pothole wasn't filled in time, then somebody in the chain of command has missed a step. And I think as the mayor, you have to be more present in neighborhoods. You have to be more present when you talk to small businesses. I shouldn't be on the phone with Public Works saying, hey, this pothole wasn't fixed. That's why I think you put capable people around you that handle those types of things, so that, the mayor's job is to be the leader of the city and talk about, the transformation that we can have in our neighborhoods.
Gotcha. Very good. Okay, so a couple final questions here. We talked a little bit about the headwinds, so I'd like to hear you kind of share more about what you think some of the challenges are. And this conversation is happening in the context of a lot of change at any level, right? And so being mayor, you'd have to not only appreciate that, but deal with that.
Yeah.
So what do you think those challenges are for the city? And then the second question is, even beyond how you address them, what do you think the opportunities are? Because we've got some, you've already mentioned, we've got some exciting things going in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we obviously, financially, we have to make that stable, and we have to be transparent with the public of where the money's going. But you also need to go to our partners in this region who haven't paid their fair share in a very long time, especially you look at our larger nonprofits. Go to them with a plan for where their money's going to go within their mission. How do you go to major universities and say, yeah, we understand your tuition is X amount of dollars, but, we want $2 million to fill our coffers so that we can make payroll this month. No university is going to give you that money. Yeah. You go to those universities and say, look, we understand that your students like our trail system. How about supporting us and giving us a couple $1 million to revamp some of these trails that connect you to the Strip District or, your university to Shenley Park or Frick Park. That's kind of the vision that you have to have. And then that saves me as the city capital so I can take those couple of $1 million and go to a neighborhood business district that needs some revitalization, whether it's lighting, whether it's storefronts, whether it's sidewalks. Then also, we have our large nonprofit hospitals. We have ambulances that break down to and from calls. We had a third of our fleet for our snowplows were in the shop this winter. But you go to them and say, what would really help the city? Purchase new ambulances. Because then I could save millions of dollars on my capital to invest in other projects. And I think that's where a leader steps up and says, here's what I need out of you. And that's the kind of direct message that as a mayor I would have. And you hope that, and I feel pretty confident that those partners would come to the table because it's a regional asset that we're investing in, not in our coffers so the 50 political friends that were hired under this administration stay. Those are the kind of things that don't make sense. You can't be spending taxpayer money on political allies when you don't have the money to do it. So I think that's kind of the vision that you have to have. And then you start turning the table that you can start investing in more capital projects.
Gotcha. Opportunities you mentioned already in this conversation, universities, parks, our people, history, and all that. Like, what makes you excited and optimistic? What are you hopeful about? What do we have going for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a prime opportunity if you start changing the message. I think it's focusing on the basics of cleaning our streets, cleaning, our vacant lots. Those little things go a very long way. And don't just clean them because the NFL draft's coming. Clean them because our residents deserve it. And I think that's something that we have to get in front of. Each and every day, our city needs to be clean and safe. But I do think, speaking of the draft, it's coming. That's a great opportunity. But let's go back to, I don't want the same generic ad about Pittsburgh. And that's where, you're going to be on the national stage next year. How are we going to better sell Pittsburgh than talking about growth and opportunities? And that's the message that we have been taking all over this region. And, talking to young people, look, we've won the Young Democrats endorsement. We won the Pitt Democratic endorsement. That means that, young people are gathering to our message that this is somebody that is focused on growth and opportunity, and people want those opportunities in Pittsburgh.
Gotcha. Just a final question. How would you encourage other people, young people, and what have you, to consider public service or just getting involved in the community and in what ways make sense to them?
I mean, I think it's so rewarding. I mean, you get to change people's lives. You get to help them. And it's not just paving somebody's street. It's, having a space where somebody started their first restaurant or pizza shop or whatever it might be. And then they created 3 jobs within that neighborhood. And I think that's more the fulfilling side of it than anything else.
It's wonderful. Yeah. Corey O'Connor, thank you so much for your time, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.